What is going on, everybody? Welcome in, welcome back. It's finally here. I'm going to have my preview for the Seahawks 49ers playoff game. Um, I know it's been a long time coming. I've just been busy the last few days, haven't been able to do it. But I'm here. We're going to talk a little about this game. Um, as you saw from the title of the video, how can Seattle beat the Niners? And that's going to be really the big question. So I don't know if this is so much going to be. It's going to be a preview, but I'm going to dive into ways Seattle can win this game. Um, I did a very similar video before they played the Niners in week 15. I think it was week 15 for the Thursday night game. I talked about ways Seattle could win the game. And now they didn't win, but some of the things that I did say, if you go back and watch that video, did kind of come to fruition to give them a chance to do it. So we're going to do some things similar in this one. We're probably going to go a little more in depth here. I've got a lot of numbers up here, so we're going to really dive into everything. I'm not much of an editor, so if I take time to go on here and move sites and stuff, just bear with me on it. So this is all raw and natural, filming. I'm not going to edit. I don't do any of that stuff. It's just what I say is what's on camera. Before I get started, and I always just say this just to avoid anybody, trolling or anything like that. I think the Niners are a better team. I know they are a better football team. They've proved it on the field by beating Seattle twice, both in fairly convincing games. They had a better record all season. And truthfully, top to bottom, I think the Niners might have the most talented roster in the NFL. Them and Buffalo, probably in my mind, up for debate. Kansas City, teams like that, the Bengals, Dallas and the Eagles up there too. But you know what I mean. It's an extremely talented roster. The Niners probably should win this football game. There's a reason they're 9.5, 10-point favorites. Like, Vegas doesn't have a horse in the race. They don't care who wins. So there's a reason that the Niners are favored by that many points. So when I go into this, bear in mind, I know that. I know the Niners should probably win this football game. I do. But I do want to give some reasons why Seattle could be competitive in here. Because it is. Listen, Seattle is not the Houston Texans going into San Francisco. This is a decent Seahawks team. There are things they can do to keep this game competitive and stay in it. So we're going to dive a little bit into that and talk about ways they can do that. And I'll talk about what I think they need to do, to be competitive. So first and foremost, I'm going to start with Seattle's offense and what they need to do to go into San Francisco and win. Now, the weather could be a big factor. It sounds like it could be kind of a downpour during the game with some decent wind gust. That can kind of throw a lot of things out the window. It's going to make more, the running game more of a factor, certainly, than it may have already been. It can lead to crazy turnovers. It can lead to people slipping. Now you might think the rain kind of gives the Niners an advantage because they're more the physical ground and pound team. But here's the thing. The rain and all that makes it a sloppy game. Anything that can get the game more close and more even, in my mind, benefits Seattle. So that means if Seattle's slipping all over the place, so be it. They're the worst team, so they should be slipping all over the place. You know what I mean? If the Niners are slipping and making mistakes, that's something Seattle can take advantage of. Now, I mean, it could backfire and the Niners get fumbles all over the place and win 48-0. That's possible. But I'm just saying, in my mind, I don't know if it necessarily, anything that can kind of even the playing field a little bit, and putting it in slop and making it closer, in my mind, benefits the underdog. So I would say that benefits Seattle a little bit because it's hard to score in that weather. It's hard to kick in that weather. Now, yes, Seattle's going to have those same issues, but anything that makes it 3-0 in the fourth quarter in a game that normally you would think San Francisco should win by a couple scores, in my opinion, does benefit the Seahawks. So, will it play out that way? I don't know, but I don't think it's necessarily, a bad thing. Now, if we go back and look at the last matchup, now let's actually get into the game. If we look at the last matchup, one thing that killed Seattle is the Niners got pressure from everywhere on Geno Smith. The interior offensive line struggled for the Seahawks, particularly Austin Blythe and Phil Haynes, Gabe Jackson at right guard. The tackles struggled. Nick Bosa had a field day against Charles Cross and Abe Lucas as well. Nobody played good on the Seahawks offensive line. Geno was a bit indecisive as well and just didn't have time to make throws. He couldn't step into the pocket and make things happen in that game. I'm actually going to pull up the box score for that game real quick. So just give me a second here. Let's see if I can pull that up. And I can. This is the game I'm talking about, was 21-13 in Seattle. So that was the main issue. In terms of total sacks in the game, the Niners had 3, but it was more than that. There was also a really bad roughing the passer call on Nick Bosa that was called back where he got pressure that was returned for a touchdown by the Niners, which would have made the game even more of a blowout at the time. When I watched that game, and I said in my post game, for all intents and purposes, I thought the Niners were the superior team. Even though the final score ended up being by 8, I never really felt like Seattle was in the game. But with that said, the Niners had the ball last in the fourth quarter, and Seattle was a stop away from getting the ball back down by 1 score. So they were in the football game. So for Seattle offensively too, the running game, talk about that a little bit. Kenneth Walker had 12 carries for 47 yards and a long run of 15 yards. That may not sound like much, but if you've looked at the 49ers run defense, they have not allowed a run of over 10 yards in 3 weeks to a running back. This run defense has stifled teams. 12 for 47 is not bad, and every single one of Walker's carries, I believe, went for 3 yards or more, meaning it wasn't just one run of 57 yards and then a bunch of negatives. He was pushing the pile. Now, based on the score, I don't think they were able to really get him the ball much playing from behind. Remember, they were down multiple scores for a lot of this game. Geno Smith also had a carry for 18 yards, and Travis Homer had 1 for 5. You add that together, and you've got 14 for 70 14 for 70. That's a pretty good day on the ground if you can get that going through multiple carries. The last few weeks, Kenneth Walker has really taken off. Pete Carroll said he talked to Walker about being more decisive and getting those 2-3 yards instead of dancing around. You look at that, now apparently conversation happened at halftime of the Chiefs game. In the second half against the Chiefs, Walker was phenomenal, got over 100 yards, went over 100 yards against the Jets, and went over 100 yards against the Rams. None of those teams, maybe the Jets would come the closest, none of those teams have the defense that the Niners have, whether it's the D-line or the speed of the linebackers with Greenlaw, Fred Warner, and Al-Shaair, and the safety play as well that the Niners have. They're able to load the box, get down there, and the speed. The Niners defense is loaded with speed. Therefore, some of the dancing around with Kenneth Walker, trying to bounce the outside, I don't think that's going to work against the Niners. I don't think you're going to be able to hit those outside runs as much. Those linebackers are too fast. Bosa is too fast off the edge. Armstead, same thing. Those guys are just too fast, can come off blocks. They're going to get you. And that's outside runs, that's wide receiver screens, that's running back screens, that's little dump off passes, whatever it may be, are going to be tough to execute against the Niners. However, I do think you can maybe run up the middle a little bit. And that doesn't mean I think you're going to be wildly successful, but if you can pop off 3-4 yards a carry here and get into some manageable third downs, you have a chance. If you're in obvious passing third downs, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 13, whatever, 3rd and 7 and up, I think that, something like that, you are in for a world of trouble against this Niners defense. You've got Bosa pinning his ears back. You've got that speed of the linebacking core, all that mixed together. It's going to be very tough to convert. Geno Smith's been very good on third down, not as much recently, but overall has had a good year on third downs. I think you have to get in 3rd and manageable. Even if it's 3rd and 5. You're going to pass on 3rd and 5, but you can do a lot of different things. You can run little quick rub routes to lock it and kind of just get him in space. It's not all about running 12 yards, having to get to the sticks on a 3rd and 13. You can kind of mix things up a little bit. If you're in 4-down territory, you can still run the football there and go for it on 4th down. So doing all those things, and I think that's where Kenneth Walker is going to be important. You've got to keep the yards positive. We can't have a lot of dancing in the backfield, losing yards. And I think you've got to be able to put yourself in 3rd and manageables. Now, I'm not just saying play the game 1st and 10, 3 yards, 2nd and 7, 3 yards, and that's your whole game plan. But even doing that, I think can help you and put yourself in favorable situations. Easier said than done, but I thought Seattle ran the ball okay against the Niners last time. They weren't terrible. Walker had some moments, and he's been very good the last 3 weeks. He could have potential to have a nice game. The Niners' pass defense the last few weeks has struggled. Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke, threw for almost 300 yards. Jared Stidham had over 300 yards. And even, the Cardinals didn't put up a lot, but they did have that big play, David Blau to A.J. Green. And Seattle's quarterback wide receiver tandems are way better than Blau and A.J. Green. So there is some holes in that secondary to maybe exploit. I don't know if I call them holes, but they're not playing their best ball right now. Seattle does have some good weapons. DK Metcalf's a physical receiver. He has got to have a big game. He's had some good games this year, but they need DK Metcalf to be that physical presence, to be that kind of alpha that you can feed the football to and make things happen. There's going to have to be moments where Geno trusts DK, throws it to DK, and DK's got to make the play. Tyler Lockett's ability to be shifty and find holes in the zone. I know he's not 100%, but that's going to be crucial too. I think the tight ends are going to be really, really important in this game. The Seahawks offense is at its best when it's moving that pocket. The rollouts and the tight end comes backside and they're able to just kind of dump it, or not backside, but comes down the line of scrimmage. You know the plays I'm talking about. They've done a lot with Parkinson. Obviously, Will Dissly's out, but you've still got Parkinson who's had some big plays. Noah Fant, even Mabry's had a couple catches. Get those guys involved in the offense. And when you do those moving pockets, hopefully you can neutralize guys like Nick Bosa a little bit on the defense and get that pocket moving. Where if it's 3rd and 13 and you're just shotgun standing back there, it's going to be trouble because Nick Bosa is going to get home. He's going to. And that's where you run into problems against this defense. But if you can get those 3rd and 3s, those 3rd and 4s, you can do those plays moving the pocket and get those tight ends open. I would work the seams a little bit. If that secondary struggled, you want to try to get past those linebackers a little bit. Those linebackers eat you up in the passing game big time. What's great about the 49ers, what makes them so dangerous, is you've got an OC in Kyle Shanahan that makes life miserable for linebackers with what he does. One of the reasons the Seahawks drafted Jordan Brooks in the first round a couple of years ago. He makes life miserable for those guys. And on the other side, they've got linebackers that make life miserable for you. Maybe a guy like Colby Parkinson can find use a little bit of that speed and height advantage to get just over the linebackers, just between the safeties, and he can be a factor. And DK as well. DK has got to have an alpha game this week. That would be, I think, something I have to say. Turnovers for this offense. Seattle has turned the ball over in 16 out of 17 games this season. The only game they didn't turn over was the Jets. They won by 17. No shock when you don't turn the football over and force 2 turnovers. Or one. I don't know, they had 1 or 2. I think they had 2. Yeah, they had 2 interceptions against the Jets. Excuse me. Good things happen. Now, I never want to say no turnovers because not all turnovers are the same. If Seattle has a 3rd and 12 at midfield and Geno chucks one up deep and the Niners intercepted at their own 3-yard line, that's a punt. That's not really a costly turnover. It's no critical costly turnovers is what this team can't have. Perfect examples in that Niner game. And I'll talk about the first game a little bit too. But the Thursday night game, 7-3 late first half. Seattle's got the ball about their own 30-yard line. Little dump off to Travis Homer. And it ends up, Homer's got a few yards. And now credit to the Niners. They force the ball out. Dre Greenlaw knocks it out. They return it to the 6-yard line and punch it in. They're up 14-3. You hate to say that was game over. Against that Niners team, you cannot do that. That team is going to crush you. And especially if you're getting them a 6-yard field. My kid's yelling out there again. But you give them a 6-yard field, there's no chance. So you cannot have critical turnovers in this game. You cannot. Seattle's got a very good special teams unit. You're not going to score every possession. Punts are okay. It's going to happen. You're going to be punting against this defense. But you cannot have the critical turnovers, not only because, one, it's just costly. It gives a quarterback like Brock Purdy making his first playoff start comfortable. You want to try to get him uncomfortable as much as you can. Giving him a 20-yard field is bread and butter for him and Shanahan. They're going to make things happen. So you have to avoid critical turnovers. Geno has to be a little better. I love Geno. I've got my Geno jersey. And he was phenomenal in the first half of the year. He had a lot more turnover-worthy plays second half of the year. Excuse me, I talked about the Carolina game. There was probably 5 or 6 throws he could have intercepted. Even last week, the Rams dropped an interception, which would have been his 3rd. He cannot do that. He cannot have those. Listen, incomplete stuff are going to happen, but you've got to hit your throws. Whether DK, Lockett, whoever it may be, you have to hit them. The offensive line, I don't know what you got to do, but you have to find a way to contain Nick Bosa as best as you can. He's going to do some things. Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, especially Cross, has to be better than he was last time against the Niners. A great rookie season for Charles Cross. A little bit of a drop-off in the second half. Again, he's a rookie. He's playing. This is his 18th game. This is a kid that's used to playing 12, 13 games a season. Yeah, that's going to happen. But he has got to be better. And if you got to give him some help, do it. You put a chip on him with Mabry, whoever it is. One thing interesting about the Niners, if you look at their defense here, and I found this very interesting. I'm going to pull this up here. Let's see. Let's go to sacks. Nick Bosa has 18.5. He's probably the defensive player of the year. They might have two of the best defensive players in the league with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. But after Bosa, it's 18.5 sacks. You have Samson Ebukam has 5. Charles, I always pronounce this. Oh my gosh. Omenihu. Charles Omenihu. Gosh. I look at I freeze up 4.5. The rookie Drake Jackson had 3. Givens, Warner, Willis with 2. Hufanga had 2. And Hassan Ridgeway had 1. Kerry Hyder had 1. I don't even see one from, did Kinlaw have a sack? I don't even see Javon Kinlaw in here. Did I go past him? This is what I get for just doing it on the fly here. Yeah, I didn't see Kinlaw in there. I know he's back, but he didn't do it. Another thing that's interesting, I know they played 9 games, but Eric Armstead didn't have a sack. That surprised me. I thought he was a big factor in the game against Seattle. I was surprised to see he didn't have a sack. That doesn't mean, now sacks aren't everything. You can get pressures without sacks. So that doesn't mean, I'm not saying these guys had bad seasons, but outside of Bosa, it's not like 10, 12 guys that can get after you. Now, Bosa's the best in the business, so, that's a tall order here. So I'm not just saying, just stop Nick Bosa. I'm not pulling the Joker saying we just kill Batman, and that's simple. But if you can find a way, it is a team that doesn't have a lot of sacks from a lot of other guys. So if you can find a way to keep Bosa under wraps as best as possible. And the great thing is Charles Cross doesn't have to dominate Nick Bosa. He just has to be, like, if you gave him a D- last game, if he can be a C, you might have a chance. He just needs to be okay. He just needs to be able to kind of hold his own as best as possible against Bosa. If you can do all that, I do think there's some ways the Seahawks can move the ball. But again, I think you've got to get the running game going. I think Kenneth Walker showed he can run on this defense with maybe more carries. Now, maybe it was because he had less carries. I don't know. But the way Walker's run the last 2.5 weeks, and really this season in general, I think he can. I think he can run between the tackles, hopefully. I think you've got to get the pocket rolling a little bit, especially when you're in third and shorts and third and mediums. You don't just want to be standing back there. That's when those pass rushers pin their ears back. That's when Bosa's going to get you on 3rd and 11s, 3rd and 12s. You either have to get the ball out quickly on those, or you have to avoid those as much as possible. Get the pocket rolling, get those tight ends coming across. I would get Colby Parkinson involved. I would try to get him and DK especially, because Tyler Lockett's more the all over the field. But DK and Parkinson, with their size, you can just get them on that second level past the linebackers. That's the spot. You've got to have those quick hitters too. I was watching Total Access yesterday. Kurt Warner talked about spreading it out a little bit with a lot of wide receivers. I get his point with that, to neutralize the pass rush a little bit, get it out, get it going. But I would really see here about trying to get that run game established first. I really would. As much as you can keep the Niners off the field. And nothing's more demoralizing than having a team just run it down your throat. I'm not saying that's what Seattle's going to do to the Niners, but if they can find a way to do that. And again, well, it doesn't have to be 20 carries for 140 yards, but if you can just move those chains, 3-4 yards is okay, puts you in second and third and manageables where you can pick up first downs. You got to avoid the 3rd and logs, and you have to avoid critical turnovers. Again, not all turnovers created equal. An interception at midfield, 3rd and 15, thrown up in the end zone, not the end of the world. That's a punt. But a turnover at your own 32 on 3rd and 12 that the Niners get the ball at the 27 is brutal. You cannot have those. Cannot have any turnovers this game, or critical turnovers, or you will lose. Now, let's move on to what the defense has to do against the Niners offense. One thing that's fascinating, we're going to go back here to the Niners scores here a little bit. If you look at since Brock Purdy took over as quarterback, This is the points they've scored in games. I'll count the Miami game since it came in, I think, at like 3-0. 33, 35, 21, 37, 37, 38. What was the common theme there? A lot of 30s. A lot of 30s in there. 33 being the least, except for one. It was a 21, and that was against the Seattle Seahawks. It was in Seattle. I know that's a difference, but that was the Niners' worst offensive output since Brock Purdy took over as starter. Couple things there. Two caveats I'll put in. They took a knee at the 1 yard line. They probably could just punched it in the end of the game. They would have had 28. But they also had a score where they had a 5-yard field. Now, they created that, so kudos to them. And they probably should have a pick six too. But my point being that was their worst offensive output in terms of points since Brock Purdy took over. Now, the scary thing is, if you're Seattle, is you look at those numbers, that's a lot of 30s that Brock Purdy and company have hung on people. So, hopefully everything's okay out there. And hopefully, that wasn't just a random occurrence and that you can kind of repeat that again. One thing I think that was interesting last game, and I don't think Seattle's defense played great in the last game. I really don't. They were outmanned. But I thought they played hard. I thought they certainly showed up to play that game as much as they could. Did the Niners run on them? Yes, but it wasn't to the tune of, in fact, let's go back here and look. McCaffrey didn't go off something amazing. It was a good game. I'm pretty sure he went over 100, but everybody's going over 100 on the Seahawks. Let me pull up the box score here. McCaffrey had... Purdy was 17 of 26 for 217. McCaffrey was 26 for 108. Mason was 4 for 64. He had that 55-yarder at the end of the game, which counts, so I'm not trying to, diminish that. But again, it wasn't, the Josh Jacobs game or anything. They did hold okay against McCaffrey. They also, remember early in that game, they lost Brian Monet for the season to injury, and Al Woods wasn't in that game either. So you were playing LJ Collier at nose tackle and Quentin Jefferson, and Poona Ford had to slide back in at nose tackle from his 3-4 end position. So they had all kinds of a mess on that D-line that game. You do have Al Woods back for this game. I know I mention Al Woods every video, and you think the way I'm talking about it, he's like the best defensive player in football, but that is a huge run-stuffing D-tackle that you have back in there. The run defense, since Woods came back against the Jets, has been surprising. Not surprising, much better. Are they great? No, this is not a good Seattle run defense, but they've been formidable. They went from oh my God, every run is 8 yards to holding their own at least, just like the McCaffrey game. The 26 for 108, if that's what he does on Saturday, that doesn't mean Seattle's guaranteed to lose. You can still win it. What you can't have is the 25 for 175. You know what I mean? Where it's just constantly going off. So yeah, that would be number one. Number two, Seattle's pass rush has gotten better the last few weeks. Now, again, against lesser opponents, we've seen Darrell Taylor come alive. Bruce Irvin had a sack and a half last week. You've got to find a way. If some of those pass rushers, maybe if Taylor can win against McGlinchey a couple times. Trent Williams is probably maybe the best player in football. Honestly, pound for pound, you could say Trent Williams is the best player in football. The Niners left tackle. I don't know how many times you're going to beat him. But if maybe Taylor can beat McGlinchey a couple times, Shelby Harris can find a way to win a couple matchups on the inside and get some pressure on Purdy, that's going to go a long way. I mean, it's not simple. It's obvious. But yeah, if this pass rush can keep going, that's going to be huge. No matter who it is at quarterback, you give them all day to throw, it's going to be tough. Now, one thing I talked about, I was talking about the Niners on defense and Seattle on offense. I was talking about the linebackers and how good the Niners linebackers are and how their offense does such a good job of exploiting linebackers, and they do, especially with George Kittle. And Brock Purdy, one thing he's done a lot, he's gone over the middle. That's kind of been his MO, is over the middle here with guys like Kittle. Kittle had a big game against Seattle last time, 4 for 93, 2 touchdowns. They had that great play design for the first one and the second one. Great play designs, got him open, and he toasted it. Seattle's linebackers, it's a tough core right now, and you've lost Jordan Brooks, who's probably your best sideline-to-sideline mover here. The Niners love to run outside. You've got Deebo Samuel back. McCaffrey can bounce to the outside, and you've got Kittle over the middle. It's a tough test for a kind of weak Seattle linebacking core. You've got Cody Barton and then Tanner Muse. I don't think Barton's as bad as people talk about. I think since he's kind of played middle linebacker with Brooks being out, he's been okay. He's played pretty good the last couple weeks. It's going to be a big game for him and Tanner Muse. They have got to be on point. I would expect Seattle to actually go a lot more nickel in this game. I think you're even going to see some two safety things. They did that a lot against the Niners last year in San Francisco when they beat them. There was a lot of Ryan Neal and Jamal Adams on the field. I think you're going to see that this week. Ryan Neal looks like he's back. That's a huge news for the Seahawks, having Ryan Neal get back. He hasn't played since the last San Francisco game. I think you're going to see a lot of Kobe Bryant, and I think you're going to see a lot of Ryan Neal and Jonathan Abram. Pete Carroll even alluded to it, saying that, Neal's going to mix in there with those guys. I think instead of playing the linebackers, I don't think you're going to see a lot of Tanner Muse. I think you're going to see a lot of Jonathan Abram and Ryan Neal, and hope that their speed more than the linebackers is what more than Seattle's linebackers, their secondary speed can help neutralize guys like Kittle a little bit. And maybe it helps on some of those outside runs as too. Instead of having Muse and Barton chase him down, you have Kobe Bryant or Ryan Neal or Jonathan Abram, who are a little bit faster, getting after those guys. So is that going to do it? I don't know. That's still a lot of Niners weapons, and you still have Brandon Ayuk as well. So and Elijah Mitchell. So that's a lot of weapons that you're asking Seattle to stop. But getting Ryan Neal back is significant and should be some good news for them. One thing I thought, and I know Hawk Blogger talked a little about this if you watch some of his stuff. He talked about how when the Seahawks blitzed Brock Purdy, he made some tough throws, and he did. If you go back and watch the game, even though they didn't get a lot of pressure, he did panic a couple times. He threw that one that Quandre Diggs just dropped. He did panic a little bit under pressure. So hopefully Seattle can find a way. We've seen Kobe Bryant blitz. He had a sack. I think a sack against the Jets. He's got 2 sacks here. They may use him. They've liked to use Ryan Neal on some blitzes. They may do that and leave Abrams back a little bit. They've blitzed Cody Barton before, and you hope then that maybe if Darrell Taylor, who's, like I said, kind of emerged, Nwosu as well, those guys can win some matchups up front. Maybe some of those blitzes can get home. You force Purdy into tough spots and force him to make tough throws. This is Brock Purdy's first playoff start. Now, it's Geno Smith's first playoff start, too. So I don't want to just dismiss it being Purdy's. But Geno's been to the playoffs. He's never started the playoff game. But, he's kind of been through the song and dance. Brock Purdy hasn't. I'm not one that gets into maybe the lights will be too bright for him. Because, the Seahawks, when they won the Super Bowl or Denver, had 0 players with Super Bowl experience. And they dominated the Broncos, who had loads of Super Bowl experience. At the end of the day, talent tends to win out. But you hope maybe that first playoff start, a little jitters from Purdy. Maybe you can force him into some early mistakes, and you have to take advantage of that. Maybe you can get that interception. If you can get a little bit pressure, get a hit, force kind of a balloon throw, maybe you can do it. Quandre Diggs has been much better. I talked about how he played so much better in the Kansas City game. He's been, by PFF, one of the best safeties in the league the last month now. Maybe he comes up and makes a pick there on an errant throw. You know what I mean? So, and Purdy hasn't lost yet. I don't know how much he's been behind a little bit in the Niners game. Maybe you get him down a little bit. You get the nerves going a little bit. So if Seattle can maybe take an early lead here, you might make the Niners a little uncomfortable. I have a couple buddies that are Niner fans, and they were actually a little bit they're a little nervous that they haven't lost a game in so long. It's kind of just kind of want to get a loss out of the way here, get that kind of, okay, we know what it feels like. And they've been winning pretty easy. I know the Raiders game was a little bit of a struggle for them. I'm not saying they were rooting for them to lose or that necessarily means anything. They could cruise here. But, maybe like I said, you get them down a little bit and a little bit like the 80 Olympic soccer game where it's like the Soviets struggle because they never been down. Not compare the Niners to the Soviets and the Seahawks to the USA teams here, but just making a point, maybe you get them down, they get out of rhythm a little bit, and it forces them off their game somewhat. Listen, this video is going on a half hour here, so I'll kind of wrap it up. Trying to think if I could think of anything else really on defense. It's going to be tough to defend those outside runs. Something Seattle's really struggled at. Their ends have struggled against the run. And the linebacking core is not great. I think extra safeties will help there as well. The secondary's been pretty good. You've got Tariq Woolen. Michael Jackson's been good the last few weeks. So hopefully they can hold up against the Niners receivers. But the Niners do so many unique concepts that it's not so much about the talent. I mean, it's great talent, but a lot of it's about the scheme as well. And I think that extra safety is also going to be responsible for George Kittle, because I don't think Barton or Muse is going to be on Kittle, and it's going to be a lot of Ryan Neal being tasked to defend George Kittle. So we'll see what happens. Listen, the Niners are better. I'm circling back to the beginning of the video. They're the better team. They've proven it. There's a reason they're a 9.5-point favorite. But you look at DVOA. They're the number 2 team overall by DVOA. But for those who don't know DVOA, it's Football Outsiders defensive value over average metric. Looks at every 0.0 essentially be average as a team. Anything below 0% is considered below average. Anything above 0 is above average. I think the Niners are like 22.7% overall above average. Seattle's like 5.4. Seattle does rank in the top 10 of DVOA. This is not a bad football team. This is not a bad Seahawks team. This is not, like I said, this is not the 2010 team, which was a bad team. We love the 2010 team and the Beastquake moment, but that was not a good football team at all. That was a bad team, and they beat the Saints, luckily, but that was not a good football team. This is not that. This is a decent football team. Yeah, they're a tier or 2 below the Niners. There's no doubt there, but they're not incapable of going in there and battling this team. Even if we go back to the first game against the Niners, it was 27-7, but there were some moments in that game where Seattle had some opportunities. They had the ball at the goal line. They had DJ Dallas throw a pass that was intercepted. They had a big play, I think down 13-0 to DK Metcalf that was called back because Abraham Lucas blocked his guy so well, and they called it for an eligible man downfield. Now, again, the Seahawks had prepared for Trey Lance, and then Jimmy Garoppolo came in because of the injury. Listen, the Niners were the better team. I'm just saying there were some moments in that game where Seattle hung in there a little bit and was competitive. The last game, I will point out, the Niners didn't have Deebo Samuel as well, and that's a big impact, having him back clearly. I keep saying, I'm going through this and saying, but, should the Niners win the game? Yeah. But Seattle's also got nothing to lose. We've seen the videos this week. This team is loose, and I don't think it's a matter of them not caring. I think it's, Pete's way of getting them ready, keeping them humble in the moment, kind of being like, hey, enjoy this. Have fun with it. There's no stress. We just have to win. We don't have to worry about any other game. It's just our game in front of us. All right? We've got nothing to lose. The Niners are the team that if they lose this game, if Seattle loses this game, we're going to get into draft talk. We have the 5th pick in the draft. I'm okay. It's going to stink, but I'm okay. If the Niners lose, that's going to be an offseason of questions they're going to have to answer, again, about the quarterback position. What do they do now? So there's a lot at stake here for a Niners team that is expected to make a Super Bowl run. So if you can put a little bit of that pressure on them, maybe you can make something happen here. Maybe you can get the best of them and win this football game and shock the world a little bit here. It's a good Seahawks team. They've got a great rookie class. This is a rookie class that is now on the national stage. For really, outside of week 1, we didn't know much about the rookie class. For the first time this season, the nation gets to see Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, Kenneth Walker. Show them. Show the nation why this is one of the best rookie classes in the league. We talk about talent winning. Maybe it's Seattle's young talent that comes up and makes some big plays in this game. So that's it. I'm not going to make a prediction or anything. Listen, the Niners are favored by 9.5 for a reason. They probably should win this football game, but I'm a Seahawks fan. So, I'll pick Seattle. Why not? What's it going to hurt? I'm giving you my Seahawks fan opinion here. So I'm not going to really do a game prediction because it's either going to be an obvious, the Niners, or a biased pick for the Seahawks. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry it went so long. Just had a lot to dive into. Enjoy the game on Saturday. Let's get a W. Let's go on to Philly, and let's keep the dream alive. Hope everybody has a great day. Please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later. Peace.